Bombshell recordings released by the New York Times are putting House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy in the hot seat. In those recorded conversations, McCarthy reportedly told a group of Republicans former President Trump should consider resigning in the wake of January 6th. The recordings back up reporting from a new book released by authors with the New York Times describing McCarthy's sharp comments aimed at Trump. McCarthy has released a statement calling the comments, quote, totally false and wrong. Our D.C. insider, NewsNation Washington Bureau Chief Mike Viqueira joins us now. So, Vic, we've learned that McCarthy recently had a phone call with Trump. Do we know how that phone call went?
Well, that's right, and we should probably set this up for you because Kevin McCarthy was caught on tape. The Republican from Bakersfield, California, was, up until last night, on a glide path to be the next Speaker of the House if, as expected, Republicans take control after the November elections, and virtually everyone in this town and elsewhere thinks that is exactly what's going to happen until this tape that was revealed just last night, audio tape of a conversation that Kevin McCarthy had just 4 days after the riot of January 6th, where that group of very angry people disrupted the constitutional process of counting the electoral votes. Here's what he told, of all people, Liz Cheney, speaking about what he's going to tell President Trump at the time he was president. It's the only discussion I would like to have with him, meaning President Trump, is that I think this will pass, and it would be my recommendation, you, meaning President Trump, should resign. Okay, joining me right now, Nichole Stanage of The Hill. He's the White House columnist and general man about town. Nichole, this has really exploded over the last 24 hours or so. Why is that a problem for Kevin McCarthy?
I think there are about 2 or 3 elements, all of which are bad for Kevin McCarthy. One is that it very simply makes it appear as if he is giving a false impression of who he is and what he believes. The second thing is this movement between the anti-Trump forces and then later sort of ingratiating himself with Trump. And all of this, of course, plays into the question of whether pro-Trump members of Congress will indeed support him for Speaker if it comes to that.
Because Donald Trump, for all intents and purposes, runs the Republican Party. He is revered. His endorsement is sought after in this election year. Kevin McCarthy now saying that he wanted him to resign initially. That was 4 days after January 6th. So after this report came out initially, before this tape, McCarthy said it was totally false. This is the liberal media taking up the agenda of Democrats. Then the tape came out. I should point out that 18 days after that conversation, Kevin McCarthy made the pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago. He went down and saw President Trump, and then everything changed. Nichole mentioned the call that happened last night, Kevin McCarthy reaching out to Donald Trump. Why did he need to do that?
He needed to do that, I think, to mollify the former president and specifically to try to minimize the chances that the former president would blast him publicly. The people I've spoken to in Republican and pro-Trump ranks today, that's what they are watching for. Is Trump going to come out and have a public attack on McCarthy?
After all, there have been a lot of prominent Republicans who have trashed President Trump, either during the 2016 campaign, I'm thinking of Lindsey Graham, and the current Ohio senatorial candidate on the Republican side, J.D. Vance, who said horrible things about Donald Trump and now all of a sudden likes Donald Trump. And in fact, Donald Trump has endorsed him. So can Kevin McCarthy come back from this?
He can, possibly. That reminds me of the old saying in politics that voters don't mind if you flip-flop as long as you're facing the right way at the end, right? I think that is Trump's view of these things.
Yeah.
He is willing to forgive past criticism of him so long as you now support him. And J.D. Vance is a prime example of that.
Okay, look. I worked in the House of Representatives for a long time. The Speaker of the House is it's an important job. No matter what you think of Nancy Pelosi at the time, John Boehner, it's the second in line to the presidency after the vice president. Everything that happens on the floor of the House happens because the Speaker of the House wants it to happen. Whatever legislation, whatever laws are passed, it's a big deal. This is a gift, though, this episode, for Democrats. Because Donald Trump is not on the ballot. There's nothing motivating Democrats. There's an enthusiasm gap. Donald Trump motivates Democrats, and the higher his profile rises, the more it helps them try to come back from what's many people assume is going to be a certain defeat. Today, nothing less than President Joe Biden in Seattle for Earth Day, of all things, took time out to take note of what happened over the last 24 hours.
You shouldn't aside. This is a MAGA party now. It's, you know, you got the senator from Texas and others. These guys are a different breed of cat. They're not like what I served with for so many years. And the people who know better are afraid to act correctly because they know they'll be primaried.
All right, we got to point out that that was not in response to a question. That was Joe Biden just sort of talking about this incident, raising it on Earth Day in Seattle, apropos of nothing. So why did he do that?
Because Democrats would love nothing more than to make the midterms a referendum on former President Trump again, and to tie the Republican Party as closely as possible to the former president. Yes, Trump is very popular with Republican voters. The population at large, it's a very different story. And as you say, he is a catalyst to get Democratic voters to the polls, usually a difficult thing to do in midterm elections.
Okay, thank you very much, Niall. And Nichole, as far as we know, Kevin McCarthy has not reacted or put out a statement in public since the revelation of these tapes became public last night. We're waiting to hear what Kevin McCarthy has to say, but the odds are, the thinking is here that he can survive this and still become the Speaker of the House if, as expected, Republicans take control after the November elections. Nichole.
All right, Vic, Niall, thank you for that. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.